Hi folks, welcome to the Moving Beyond Being Good podcast by Gary Ryan from Organisations That Matter. In this podcast, Gary shares everything about servant leadership, service leadership, authentic leadership, how to create high performance cultures, service excellence and life balance. Here's your host, Gary Ryan.
Thank you, Sienna, for your lovely introduction. Folks, I'm absolutely delighted to be here with Dean Munro. Dean and I met many years ago when he was a scholarship holder at RMIT with the George Alexander Scholarship. He ended up graduating with honours in 2011, went into a different career than the one that he's in now, but we'll hear about that soon. In 2006, he bought his first property as a student. We're going to also learn about that. Right now, Dean is the founder and owner of Dean Munro Property Buyers, Agents and Tax Depreciation Specialist. He's got an incredible story, including having been a best-selling author in 2015 with his book, Breaking the Change, written with his best friend, Chris Harge. Welcome, Dean.
Thanks for having me, Gary.
It's great to have you here, mate. I'm really delighted. I love seeing the journeys of what were once young students and now not quite so young, as we're all not quite so young anymore. You're certainly still a lot younger than I am, of course. I love seeing your journey. And if you don't mind, what was the first thing you did when you graduated with honours in 2011 from RMIT University?
Yeah, I took a graduate position as a quantity surveyor, Gary.
And what does a quantity surveyor do?
So quantity surveying is all about construction costing. So I wanted to definitely go into the construction industry, worked in quantity surveying, which is more client side,
Yes.
and working for developers, banks, those type of professionals, and adding value through cost estimating.
So would you say that you learned a lot about the system of how, well, in this case, retail and large buildings get built, and some of the finer details of how that system works?
Definitely. So it's all about going into great detail with being a quantity surveyor, and that gave me a really good foundation to get into real estate.
And so you'd already started with real estate due to your interest in 2006. How on earth does a student buy a home when they're just an undergraduate university student?
So I had a brother who's 2 years older, and we actually worked out it was cheaper having a mortgage than both going to college. So my brother was paying $400 a week in rent to go to college. Our mortgage repayments were significantly less than that, so that's how we got into property.
So you obviously had to do some work to get the bank to give you the loan to be able to get into that property. That's another story for another time, no doubt, but you would have learned a lot about that process. So you end up a quantity surveyor, still interested in the entire construction side of things, but then eventually you decided, after you published your book in 2015, that you wanted to go down a different path, but you couldn't just go there immediately. What was that process to transition from being a quantity surveyor to becoming a buyer's advocate?
Yeah, so I was actually working another job on top of quantity surveying. So I was actually Uber driving, and I happened to, one of my Uber clients happened to be a very reputable buyer's agent in Melbourne. So that was a really good mentor and connection to gain. And from there, I was on the weekends trying my hardest to get some momentum in the buyer advocacy space, and then during the week still working as a quantity surveyor.
So I'm assuming you're driving that Uber, you're earning more, you're earning some extra money because you'd reached the ceiling of what you could earn currently as a quantity surveyor. You're trying to build your own property portfolio, which is why you're doing the Uber driving. You pick up this client who could have been anyone. Can you tell us a little bit more about that conversation? Because this is a form of networking. And people often close themselves off from the actual opportunity, which in the end, this single conversation has had a remarkable impact on the direction of your life.
Yep. So when the lady got into the car with her husband, I asked just a simple question, what do you do for a living? And she said, I buy people property and that really excited me. And I asked, are you a buyer's agent? And she then went on to explain that's exactly what I do, and I've been doing it for the last decade. And so we just started to have a really good conversation around property and had a lot of similar interests. And from there, she became my mentor.
Oh, what a fabulous story. And people wouldn't necessarily know what a buyer's advocate does. Would you mind, as simply as you can, explaining that, please, Dean?
Yep, certainly. So buyer's agent is all about getting the best property for the best price, and we specialise in mainly Melbourne. I also do regional Victoria. So we'll be working through all the due diligence once a client signs up, and that includes doing a property and a detailed suburb report, working through with the conveyancer, doing legal review on the contract, then also getting a reputable building surveyor to go through, building inspector to inspect the property, make sure that it's all structurally sound. And then from there, if that all checks out, the due diligence, which is the most important part, then we move on to the negotiation stage. So we'll be negotiating it hard for the client because we don't work as the real estate agent for the vendor. We're independently engaged by the client, so we act as their buyer's agent. Then once we negotiate the right price and that goes through smoothly, then we'll also be completing the final inspection, just making sure that the property is in the same condition as when we purchased it. And then also, if it's an investment property, we'll do the tax depreciation report to minimise our client's tax.
Because that's another arm that you've developed over time, that tax depreciation side of the business, to be able to offer that service, of course, which is no doubt a really important service. So from the uneducated perspective, it sounds like you take the headache away from people that want to buy properties for all the little nitty-gritty things that they would otherwise have to do themselves. And many folk wouldn't even know what those steps were. I mean, experienced buyers would, but a lot of people wouldn't know what all of those little steps are. So by taking the headache away from them, you make sure that they get the right property at the right price in the right condition, with all of those extra legal and other things ticked off along the way.
We certainly take the headache away and make it a much easier process.
Anything that removes pain for most people, then, is a good thing. That's right. So what would be some examples of some success stories that you're allowed to share with us?
Yep. So a great example was for a investor recently. They had a $900K budget. So I went out, I said, I can definitely help you out. And they were buying into their self-managed super fund. Mm-hmm. Because I know all the agents in Melbourne, I found an A-grade property, as we class it. We don't like to buy compromised properties. So I found an A-grade property within 10 Ks of the city, within their budget. A month earlier, the mirror property, which was a townhouse, sold for $860,000. Because of our relationships with the agent, I negotiated that to $835,000, saving the client $25,000. So that was the negotiation phase, and also making sure that it was the right property to buy. Then, because it was a new townhouse that had just been recently completed, in the first year alone, we were able to achieve $18,000 in tax depreciation benefits. So the client is extremely happy. They've got a property which is already discounted. They've got tax depreciation benefits. And because of the location, from day settlement, we already had a renter in there for $650 a week. Yep.
Great story. And so did you contribute to getting the renter in there as well, or that's just through the network you organised that?
Yeah, so we helped with the property management side of things as well. So we ensured that it had the right property manager, and from there was able to get the people through 2 weeks prior to the settlement, meaning that we had the renter from day one.
Yes for Success, How to Achieve Life Harmony and Fulfillment is my new book. It's out now. Check out the link in the show notes for all the details of how to get the new book, Yes for Success, How to Achieve Life Harmony and Fulfillment. It's going to teach you a whole heap of strategies around how to have increased happiness now and into the future for your life. If not for you, get it for someone else that might be struggling or floating along in life. This book works. And as you can see, folks, the book debuted at number 6 on Amazon. So people have reacted to it very positively. Check it out. You can get your copy too. Now, mate, what I want to do is just say thank you for your time and effort to get on the Moving Beyond Being Good podcast. Folks, we're going to make sure that all the links to Dean are in the show notes for you, whether that be on any of your podcast apps that you're using, Spotify, Audible, whatever the case may be, iTunes, of course, and Apple, and, of course, whether you might be watching this on YouTube. Dean, thank you for your time.
Thanks so much, Gary. You're a legend.
You're welcome. So, folks, thank you for joining us again on the Moving Beyond Being Good podcast. Make sure you check out my new book, Yes for Success, How to Achieve Life Harmony and Fulfillment. Just simply go to yesforsuccess.guru and you will find out all the information for that. Regarding the Moving Beyond Being Good podcast, please make sure that you like and subscribe, and please feel free to add any comments you like on any of the apps. We'll be able to get them and get back to you. Once again, I'm Gary Ryan, the host of the Moving Beyond Being Good podcast and founder of Organisations That Matter, and I look forward to seeing you next time.